How did you come up with the host? Why did you choose to make it about aliens? I didn't have a dream to get me started on the host. I only had
Nice.
one dream that led to writing the story, which was Twilight. I should remember not to say that word. The way I got started on the host was a very boring car trip, and I had nothing else to think about, and so the idea of this two people in one body in love with the same person just sort of was in my head, and I don't know where it came from, but then I started thinking, wow, that'd be really cool, very complicated relationship. I could get some pages out of that. But the reason, it just was about aliens from the beginning. So I think it's natural for me to write about science fiction because that was something I grew up with. My dad used to always read us fantasy and science fiction at night, and so it's really my roots. And so aliens, I'm sure, is just the first of it. There'll be lots of other interesting things that come out of my files eventually. All right. Why do souls only invade or rather take over one species per planet? Example, Earth, humans, the bear planet, ice bears, etc. Do they look for the most intelligent or most violent, or they just pick a species at random? The answer to that question is that they tend to take the dominant species because they don't want a body that doesn't have much intelligence, because they couldn't work with it as well. So they could technically be implanted into a cat, but then they'd have the mind of a house cat, and that wouldn't be as much fun. Now, those of you who read carefully in the beginning will remember that on Fireworld, they realized that there were actually two intelligent life forms on the planet, and they were in the process of trying to make that work. Okay. How did you have time to write the host with so much else going on? And then in parentheses, really small, who do you like better, Ian or Jared? The body question depends on what I'm looking for on any given day, because some days you want the tough guy, you know, the muscly guy who kind of can take care of anything. Some days you want the poet, and so it just depends on which day, which one I like best. But I found the time to write it because, I know, me too. I found the time to write it because I was editing Eclipse at the time, and you know, you do all your edits and send it back to your editor, and usually you kind of get a deadline, like, okay, you have 2 weeks to get this back to us. We're in a really big hurry. So you work 12, 13, 14 hours a day, send it back, and then you would hear from them for like 3 months. And so during those 3 months is when I would work on the host. I couldn't write book 4 because what if something really big got changed in Eclipse? I just have to go back and rewrite everything, and I was itching to get started on it, but I didn't want to make more work for myself, so I started working on the host to just give myself something to do in the meantime. Of course, it ended up being twice as long as anything else I've ever written. But it was a really great project, and it was so different from Forks and from that world that it was just restful to be in a new place, and I really did enjoy that. Okay. When you wrote those tense scenes between Jared and Ian, did it remind you of Jacob and Edward? Although they're different characters, the intense love triangle seems to resonate similarly. That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. For me, I really like to write complicated situations because, I mean, if you have a girl who falls in love with a boy and everything works out really smoothly, there's not much to write about. So, you know, I like to have things a little bit more difficult than that. And so I guess there are some similarities, but the characters feel so different to me. And the situation, because there actually are two people in love with two different people, doesn't feel the same. But I can see the comparison. All right.